Hi, everyone. I'm Sabrina Rising. Thanks for tuning in. Today, we're going to talk about whether or not you might be hiding psychic abilities. This is a very popular question I get all the time. Am I psychic? Was I born psychic? Can I develop my psychic abilities? Is everybody psychic? And the answer is yes. Everybody has the ability to come online and realize their psychic abilities, their extrasensory abilities. And the reason we refer to these abilities as extrasensory is not because they're special or extraordinary. It's because they're beyond the 3D dense reality that we've been conditioned to operate in. Okay, so let me give you some perspective. When, as human beings, as souls, we elect to come into this physical incarnation as part of this karmic process, which I'll get into a little bit later in the video. And we come here essentially to understand the contrast of the experience of being whole and complete and free and at peace. We come here to understand the contrast of fear and conditioning and limitation, and this undoing process of unlearning these conditions is part of our awakening. And as we awaken, guess what happens? All of our abilities start to come online. Some of us are born with abilities that are very visible, very accessible, very noticeable early in life. Okay. And there are, as I mentioned, there are karmic reasons for that. Depending on the work you've done on yourself in previous lifetimes, you might come into this lifetime already predisposed to certain gifts, or predisposed to certain awareness, or even predisposed to a certain level of wisdom. I don't know if you've ever met a little child who, seems like they're very mature for their age, or they just say, very sage things out of nowhere. Perhaps you've encountered a child who, seems like they're talking to their imaginary friend, or they're talking to, they sense things before they can happen. I was one of those kids, and this is normal. Okay, so some of us come in with abilities already available, accessible, more so than others. But we all have these skills, make no mistake. Okay, so what happens is that as we're born, and we come into this 3D reality, the energy of 3D, as I mentioned, is very dense, and so we start to sort of shut down, right, throughout our conditioning process, which happens between the ages of 0 to 7, roughly. When the identity is formed, we're in survival mode. During this phase of our life, we're busy learning how to cope, how to relate, how to belong, how to feel a sense of approval, feel a sense of safety and love, how to essentially operate within this paradigm of humanity. This is part of the human experience, right? And the human experience is really an opportunity for us to sort of, we come in forgetting who we are, forgetting where we come from, forgetting our connection to source consciousness, and then learning the survival mechanisms of being a human. And then, when we realize at some point in our lives that this is a painful way to live, or perhaps there might be more, or perhaps we're having experiences, it's kind of like your higher self is dropping hints at you. You're having lucid dreams. You're knowing things before they happen. You can sense things. You can feel other people. You walk into the room and you can sense the energy. These are your abilities that are just kind of trickling in, reminding you that there is so much more to what you can perceive than what you're already experiencing, what you've been conditioned into experiencing. See, as human beings, we are trained to focus on the right here, the right now, what's in front of us, to use our brains to figure things out, using our logical mind to discern what's best for us. The logical mind is wonderful for things like, remembering formulas and remembering directions and figuring out how to do certain steps in life for science and logistics and so on. But it's not an accurate guide of what's available to you from a universal intelligence perspective. When we are connected to universal intelligence, we're not using our logical brain. In fact, we're using our ability to sense, to perceive, to know, to feel, and to experience beyond the realm of logic. And so, throughout the course of humanity, most of us come into suffering. We come into suffering because we're operating in this 3D reality, and we're not essentially connected to our essence. And so it's through doing deep inner work and the process of healing ourselves and creating a foundation for this temple, this physical temple that exists in 3D reality, in order for you to receive messages, trust the messages you're receiving, and develop your clairs. We all have them: clairvoyance, claircognizance, clairgustance, clairaudience, clairsalience. I mean, clairempathy. I feel like there's more clairs coming out all the time. And the fact of the matter is that these are just our ability. These are just our abilities to perceive reality beyond the 3D, to know things intuitively, to sense things. And this is very common. You might be already experiencing intuitive hits all the time, and you've learned, because of your conditioning, you've learned to dismiss those messages. You've learned to deny your own inner knowing. In fact, as children, when we're taught to behave in certain ways and operate in ways that fall in line with our environment so that we can, be approved of and be in compliance, we often override our intuitive senses. We learn to disconnect from that inner voice. And so learning to develop your own abilities, which you have them, we all do, is all about deconditioning from the fears and the beliefs and the limiting beliefs and the values that you inherited that have nothing to do with your essence. They just have nothing to do with the truth of who you are. The truth of who we all are is whole, perfect, and complete expressions of source consciousness. And when we do the inner work, which is available to every single one of us in this 3D reality, we start to come online. That's what happened to me in my process of healing. I started to heal my body first. I dealt with the physical because that was the most accessible part of my my suffering. And these are things you can do at home. Energetic hygiene, making sure you're taking good care of your body, getting good sleep, eating clean, drinking water, staying away from mood altering substances, practicing little energetic anchors, things that increase your physical vibration, like it can be burning sage or incense or smelling essential oils. There's things we can do to maintain energetic hygiene that actually heighten our ability to perceive. The most important part of that, once you've done the physical healing part, and of course, if you're suffering from, physical pain, intense physical pain, or physical dis-ease, we have to do that healing work first so that we can really not have our intuition be obstructed by this distraction. Physical pain can be a big distraction when you're developing your own intuitive gifts. So it's important to find a way to manage that and to be able to override those distractions. So, that's part of the healing journey. Once you come online physically, when you start to feel grounded and safe in your own body, we start to deal with our repressed emotions and our doubts. It's always doubt. It's always fear. Fear is always the thing that gets in the way. I teach a class on developing our intuitive abilities, our psychic abilities, and our mediumship skills. And the thing that we're always dealing with is how to overcome fear. Whether it's the fear of getting it wrong, the fear of getting it right, the fear of connecting with something that we don't know or don't understand, or perhaps it's just nervousness. We're so nervous about whether or not things are real. We need them to be real. We need them to feel, because we need to feel safe. And so, developing our own intuitive abilities is also about accepting that we are already safe. We are innately safe. Okay. And having access to the spirit realm is something that is our birthright. It's not out of the ordinary or unusual. It's something we're actually all here to develop if we so choose. We have the free will to stay in our 3D dense energy and our limiting beliefs in the existence that we've created for ourselves. If it's working for you, wonderful. But for most of us, we feel the limitation in that. We feel the lack in it. And so we want to know. We get excited about being able to develop our intuition and to develop our psychic powers. And so here's an example of some psychic powers that you may already be experiencing in your own life. Let's say, you walk into a room and you can already feel the energy and you sense instantly in your gut that it's a good feeling or a bad feeling, right? Maybe you walked into a room and you thought, I don't belong here, or I don't feel safe. Instantly your cells contract. That's your intuition talking to you. It's signaling that you're not in a safe place, and it's probably best for you to get out of there. Now, the difference between intuition and reaction is a trigger, right? So that's when we're triggered. Something is triggering us and saying, oh, this is recalling a past event or a past, something that feels like a past unresolved trauma in your life, and therefore it's bringing up fear. That's very different in the body. Reaction is something you can feel in your chest. Okay, your cells tense up, and you can really feel the nervous energy building up in your body. Intuition is a deep knowing in your solar plexus. It just is what it is, and you just know that you need to, leave this place. So this is an example of intuition. And again, the more we do the inner work to remove our reactions, to deal with our reactions, to learn how to regulate our nervous system, the more we're able to trust our intuition in moments like that, or in any type of situation. For example, let's say, and this is something that you've probably experienced in your life, it's very common, the phone rings and you know who it is. Right? You just have a sense because perhaps you thought about that person earlier in the day, or you've been thinking about that person a lot, building up to that phone call, and all of a sudden there they are. This is not an accident. Okay, this is, in the realm of universal intelligence, which exists right here, right now. It's not just in the spirit realm. Universal intelligence exists all around us, even in 3D. When you're sending out a signal, when you're focusing on somebody, you're transmitting this energy, this frequency of let's talk, let's communicate. I'm thinking of you. I would like to talk to you. You're in my thoughts. I'm wondering about where you are, what you're doing. And so naturally, that person may unconsciously all of a sudden have you pop up in their minds, right? And so this happens on a regular basis. Okay, so there is a thread, an energetic thread that's connected through all of us, right? So sometimes when I'm doing readings, for example, I can pick up on people who are alive, and I can pick up on people who are crossed over. And sometimes it's hard for me to distinguish the difference because it's all universal intelligence, okay? And you can develop these skills too. You just have to be willing to have the discipline to sit with yourself and to open yourself up to receiving this divine guidance. Whether your predisposition to clairvoyance, which is the ability to see things, see into the future, perhaps you're seeing images, or you have lucid dreams. These are all signs of clairvoyance. Or you're predisposed to claircognizance, which is knowing, deep knowing in your gut. Like you get that hit in your solar plexus, and you just know. And the more you develop that, it's like a muscle, the stronger it becomes. Or perhaps you're someone who is clairaudient, and you hear things, you hear sounds, or you hear messages. Perhaps you hear a little voice or a little whisper when you're talking to someone, or when you're in a conversation with somebody, or perhaps when you're alone. These are all signals. So we want to first begin with this attitude of, okay, I accept that there is more that I can perceive that is beyond this 3D reality. I want to accept that there is so much more to this life than what I've learned to experience, which is the 5 senses. And then start opening yourself up through meditation and through practice to all of these different signs, whether it's developing your clairvoyance, your claircognizance, your sentience, there's so many. There's audience, there is clairgustance, which is your tasting. I mean, there's so many different senses that can come online as you do this work, and just simply opening yourself up. So don't compartmentalize your psychic gifts. I want you to start to view yourself as a channel for universal intelligence. If you commit to that intention, I am a channel for universal intelligence, and start practicing receiving messages in whatever form is most accessible for you. In fact, that could be part of your intention. I choose to receive messages in whatever form is most accessible for me, and start to write down your notes and keep track of what's happening, because synchronicities are happening all around. We're just not paying attention because, as I mentioned, we've been conditioned to focus, to be in this 3D dense energy. And so we're not paying attention to the signs and the synchronicities and the messages that we're receiving. And sometimes our spirit guides really want to get our attention, so they make things very obvious, right? These are not accidents. There are no random acts in the universe. There's no accidents in the universe. There's no coincidences. Everything is always unfolding as a reflection of where you're putting your thoughts, where you're putting your energy, and where your desires are. If you're desiring something and really calling it in with your heart, then you'll start to see the evidence of that show up in your life. Okay, this is part of the manifestation process. And so developing your psychic abilities is no different than that. It's about setting an intention and opening yourself up and believing that you can, and allowing those gifts to come online. And of course, there's processes that you can do that will help you develop your abilities better in a more accelerated fashion. As I mentioned, I teach a class called The Way of the Mystic, which you can check out on my website. But if you're if you're by yourself and you just say, I want to just start doing this work, start with the energetic hygiene part and make sure that your body is clear and that you're not obstructed with all this dense energy and distracted from your intuition. And then go into your meditation state and relax and just set the intention for all of your abilities to come online. I choose to be a channel for universal intelligence, and just take a deep breath and let go. Try not to make something happen. As soon as we get into our logical brains and we try to force something to happen, we lose our connection. Okay, we lose our ability to really feel, sense, know, hear, taste, smell, all of the clairs, as I mentioned before. Okay, so just relax and allow things to come through. This is a process. Developing your psychic abilities basically means waking up to the infinite realm of possibilities in your ability to perceive. Okay, so we're waking up from going to sleep in this dense energy and coming online and allowing our gifts to flourish, to expand, and to fully express themselves. So be patient with yourself and keep an intuitive journal so that you can make notes of what you feel, what you see, what you hear, what you taste, what you smell in your practice. And then when you go out into the world, you'll notice those synchronicities. You'll notice any messages that you're receiving, anything that is related to your practice. You'll start to be able to connect the dots and start to build your own intuitive guidance. Throughout the course of my life, as a child, I remember having intuitive hits. I remember knowing things before they happened, but I didn't have the environment that could validate what I was experiencing, that could encourage or even nurture my gifts. And so I learned to shut them down. I shut them down out of survival and because, I was confused. And so this is so true for so many of us. And so if we find environments where we have support, perhaps you have a friend in your life or someone that you can chat with about these things that can support you in your development, this is so, so helpful because it gives that inner child an opportunity to come forward and play and express and wake up to the magic that so many of us have locked away inside. So if you think you're psychic, if you've even had the thought, I wonder if I'm psychic, chances are you are at a point in your life where you're ready to develop these gifts. And so I hope this video was helpful. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to subscribe. And if you have any questions about how to develop your abilities, please leave a comment below.